Hello, good evening.
Hello there.
I'm Paul with the Garland County Library, and I'm here once again with Judy Dare, who is the Know It to Grow It chairperson with the Garland County Master Gardeners. And this is episode something of our Know It to Grow It
Lots,
series.
episode lots.
Yes, of our monthly series. We've lost track, but tonight we have a very special guest who we'll introduce here in a moment. She is a library favorite and former employee, Belinda Jonak, and her program is going to be Snakes of Arkansas. Judy's going to give a little bit more on her bio here in a moment, but I implore you to ask questions and comment and leave comments about Snakes of Arkansas while you're watching this program, because if you do, one of you will win a very special prize. We have a $25 gift card to Hot Springs Sod and Turf with one of your names on it. And the way you will win that is by asking a question about snakes. So, Judy, what do you have?
Well, that's one of my favorite stores. It's just right up the road from me, and they do a great job. And they've got such interesting things there, from plants, trees, garden art, just all the happy frog stuff, just really good stuff. So, y'all ask a good question about a snake, and maybe you'll win that. But I would like to have just a couple seconds here to talk about what's been going on in Master Gardener Land. I really appreciate you joining us tonight on a special night. We will be going back to our regular schedule next month on June 15th at 6 p.m. And I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel like it's nearly June, but it looks like we're going to have lovely weather coming for this weekend. And it was so nice not to have to deal with the heat for the past 3 days. Now, next month, we have a really great speaker lined up. Her name is Casey Johansen, and she's a park ranger at Buffalo River National Park. And she will be talking about protecting the night sky. Now, Buffalo River National Park is one of the only dark areas in the nation, so it's kind of a big perk for Arkansas to have it. I heard her speak at the Master Gardener Conference last weekend, and she was super interesting. In addition, we're going to have a special guest, Rachel Keeling. Now, Rachel is a stormwater coordinator for Hot Springs, and she's going to tell us about a really fun family event that happens on Saturday, June 25th at Family Park. It's a free rain barrel sponsored workshop sponsored by the University of Arkansas Extension, the City of Hot Springs, and 4-H, so it should be a really good time. And I don't know how many of y'all have a rain barrel, but I do, and I love it. And it has certainly stayed full all this spring. I'd also like to thank all of you who came to our plant sale last month. It was a great success, and I hope all of your plants are growing well. If you have any questions, please remember the Ask a Master Gardener booth at the Saturday Farmers Markets. We will not be there this weekend, but we'll be back the next and all the way through the summer. Now, it's not too late to have your soil tested. All you need to do is bring a quart bag of soil to the extension office at 236 Woodbine, and they'll help you out. If you're having a plant issue, say you've got a wilted plant or a tree that has something going on that you don't know what you can do about, bring a sample to the extension office, and they'll send it to our state plant pathologist. She is great and will send you back a report telling you what's going on, if you have wilt in your garden, what you need to do about it. And these are great free services, so please take advantage of them. And also, please remember to ask those questions. The first question will get that great gift card, and two more will get our signature Note to Grow It gift bags, and they can be picked up at the Garland County Library circulation desk starting tomorrow morning. So, as Paul said, tonight's speaker is a library favorite. Belinda Jonak has been a master naturalist for 8 years and was a member of the chapter's inaugural class. She really has too many interests to even list, but flora and fauna are very high on her list. She recently retired after a 20-year career with the Garland County Library. She holds a master's degree in science and wants everybody to be aware of our local environment and how we can keep it healthy. Please welcome Belinda Jonak.
Hi. All right, we're going to talk about snakes this evening. I am extremely fond of these little critters, and most of them I think are extremely attractive, extremely good for the environment, and they are worthy of respect. In this specimen, I cheated a little bit. You don't actually usually find this particular sort of rat snake in Arkansas, but it's really close to the border. Corn snakes are totally harmless, and this one may have been bred for the pet trade, but it is a lovely snake. Okay, so we have 36 species of snakes in Arkansas, and of those 36, you only have 6 that are a problem. They are venomous, and all you need to do to be safe is to pay attention to those 7 species, 6 species, and you have no problem. It takes a little work and a little practice. We have Copperheads, Cottonmouths, and the most common is going to be the Copperhead. And in aquatic environments, there are some Cottonmouths, and the other 3 are rattlesnakes, and a rattlesnake has a rattle, so that's easy. Okay, the only exception is one that we don't even have in this county. If you look at the range map, you have to go way down towards the southwest part of Arkansas to even find these, and they're fairly rare even there. They are pretty shy. They're usually found like under leaf litter. They're not out and about that often anyhow. There's an old rhyme, the red and yellow kill a fellow, red and black venom lack, which only works in the US, by the way. It will work around here in terms of identifying which snakes to be wary of. Okay, we have several mimics that are bright colored and similar to a coral snake, but they are totally harmless. And those are the ones you're going to be finding around here. Okay, if you look closely, you'll see that there's a black stripe and a light colored stripe. So light and yellow or white means it's harmless. And that's an eastern king snake and a milk snake. You've got a light yellow, and in this case, a white band, and it's right next to a black, which means it's a safe snake. They're harmless. The most common venomous snake that almost everybody who's out and about in Arkansas has seen copperhead at least once. They're fairly common. They are cryptically colored, but if you see one, the patterns are pretty consistent. Most of the accidents happen if you don't see the snake and the snake doesn't see you. And in a copperhead's case, they have a tendency to stay still and rely on their camouflage to keep them safe. So you just have to watch where you're putting your feet and don't go walking around in the dark in flip-flops. Stepping on one is probably the most common way to get bitten. They are pit vipers, and the young ones of copperheads and cottonmouths both have yellow tail tips, which they use as a lure. They grow out of that yellow tail tip, but if it's got a yellow tail tip, it is likely a young venomous snake. But it has all the typical characteristics of a pit viper. It's got elliptical pupils. It's got a pit. The thing you want to remember, kind of tattoo this on your brain, if it's got a Hershey's Kiss shape marking or an hourglass. Some people say they're an hourglass pattern that extends over both sides. That works. And they also look sort of like Hershey's Kisses. That's very typical. And pretty much all of our copperheads are going to be marked like that. This broad-banded copperhead is unusual. It would be very rare to see one like that. But the vast majority are going to have this. When you're looking at them from above, you're going to see this hourglass pattern. Very typical. Now, if you see one that has these blotches or saddles, it's not a copperhead. This one's an eastern rat snake. The color, of course, is not the same either, but those blotches that don't extend all the way down the sides means it's not a venomous snake. Again, Hershey's Kiss shape, hourglass, either way, whatever works for you to remember that pattern. That's very typical of a copperhead. You're going to see a lot of variations in shades of brown. They can be kind of light brown to golden brown, but the majority of them are that kind of reddish brown. But again, saddle-shaped blotches, white next to black. This one's a milk snake, totally harmless. And if you're in an aquatic environment and see these broad bands, it's harmless. Northern water snake. When you're looking at kind of the overall features of the snake, pay attention to the head. If it has a turned up nose, a pointed snout like this, it's harmless. There's a lot of variation in this particular snake, and I'll say more about it later, but hognose snakes are very cool snakes, and they're all have this turned up nose. Some people call hognose snakes puff adders, spreading adders. It's all for show. They're harmless. And a copperhead is a lot more laid back. It's not going to put on a big show. It's going to stay still unless it's threatened. But again, typical pattern, Hershey's Kiss, hourglass shape. Does not have a turned up nose, elliptical pupils. Our next most common venomous snake is going to be a cottonmouth. Now, these are variable, but if you come across one and it feels threatened, this is a really typical response. It's going to open its mouth and let you know that it's there. Juveniles have the same general shape, the dark band through the eye, that's diagnostic too, but they have usually they're better patterned or more clearly patterned than the adults. They tend to get kind of dull colored and the pattern gets kind of obscured as they get older. Okay, and by comparison, the copperheads will keep that pattern throughout life. A young one, like this one, looks just like the adult except for having a greenish or yellowish tail tip. And one thing to kind of be aware of, the light conditions are going to affect the pupil shape. And in this one, and in a lot of the pictures, you're going to, because of the flash and in full sun, it's going to have a fairly elliptical pupil. But if you find one that's in dark, it's going to be like a cat. It'll open up and it'll look more round. Again, take a good look at the heads. This is a typical non-venomous outline, brown pupils, not much in the way of a neck. And all these are hognose snakes. They're highly variable and totally harmless. But again, take a look at the heads. It's got kind of an eyebrow that makes it looks like it's frowning. a distinct pit in the case of the pit vipers, which include the rattlesnakes, the copperhead, and the cottonmouth. Young cottonmouth, distinct pattern, but pretty much all the cottonmouths are going to have that banded black stripe through the face. Very distinctive. But yeah, there are a whole bunch of snakes that have kind of a similar outline in terms of pattern. But look at the head. If you can recognize that head shape and that dark stripe through the eye, that's diagnostic of a cottonmouth. And this one gives a good illustration of the fading of those young patterns. As they get older, they get kind of dusty looking when they're dry and very little pattern. But the head shape, that doesn't change. That overhanging kind of an eyebrow and the dark mask, that's a cottonmouth. And they are very likely, if alarmed, to do this gaping posture. A copperhead won't do that, but cottonmouth definitely will. It's letting you know, I'm here, don't step on me. Black stripe, black mask, vertical pupil, pit for sensing heat, classic venomous profile. And this one's kind of unusual, but you can still tell it's got a very distinct neck, yellow tail tip. It's a young cottonmouth. Right next to a northern water snake. They share the same habitat, but the water snake has less of a neck to it, a more rounded posture, or a more rounded profile. Again, a good comparison. So you've got a ribbon snake with round pupil, kind of largest eyes in this species, no pit, harmless. Vertical pupil, pit, venomous. And these are the ones that get confusing. You just have to kind of look at a lot of snakes. There are plenty of online resources that will give you comparisons just like the ones I have here. And these snakes, the brown water snake, the red-bellied, they're harmless, not to be confused with a cottonmouth. Cottonmouth usually rides a little higher in the water, but it has that sharp profile, a dark mask through the eye. It doesn't show up quite as well in this specimen. But take a good look at those profiles and compare them. Okay, and our other common venomous snake, relatively common, is a timber rattlesnake. And if you're looking down from top, that's kind of a cinnamon brown stripe along the back, the chevron pattern, that's also typical of a timber rattler. You have the classic venomous features, elliptical pupil, kind of a scale over the eye, a distinct neck. They do come in some variations in color. You can see that this one doesn't show as much of a cinnamon stripe, and it's a little darker in pattern, but it's a rattlesnake, and it has a rattle. This one you probably will not come across at all. They're very rare here and probably going to be our largest and heaviest snake. but a diamondback is more typically found in the western states. And this particular one, this light colored one, is almost certainly from out west. But the ones we find here have a diamond-shaped pattern, and they have stripes. Sometimes they're called coontail rattlesnakes, but they have black and white stripes and, of course, a rattle. And sometimes the timbers are called velvet tails. They have a solid black tail, and it almost looks velvety, as opposed to the diamondback. And diamondbacks are a lot jumpier too. They tend to be kind of aggressive, and they pack up a lot of venom. They get to be quite large. Again, comparing profiles, you're looking down from the top. The typical rattlesnake, the timber, and the diamondback are going to have this neck with large jaws. Now, we do have a pygmy rattler, which is a lot smaller. I'll show you one of those in a minute. And the cottonmouth and the copperhead also have a typical profile where you have a distinct neck when you're looking down from the top. The only exception to that profile is going to be the coral snake, which again is not even found here. Okay, when you're looking at them, another example. A round head, not much perceptible neck, round pupil, non-venomous. In this case, it shows a little more neck, but this is a water snake, and it's non-venomous also. It just takes some practice to tell them apart. And this one, and some snakes will, when they're alarmed, flatten themselves to make them to look more threatening. So it looks like they've got more of a triangle than they actually have. But again, you're looking at that profile. They've got a flattened sort of profile, and in some illustrations, they call it boxy. But this is typical elliptical pupil, distinct pit, venomous. Round pupil, no pit, more of or less of a neck, non-venomous. Okay, our other venomous snake is quite small. I don't think there have been any fatalities associated. It would be extremely rare, put it that way. But it is venomous, and we do have them here. These are pygmy rattlesnakes. And the young ones, just like the copperheads and the water moccasin, the cottonmouth, will have yellow tail tips when they're young. And it does have a little rattle, but it sounds more like the buzzing of an insect. They're so small. They don't get much over maybe a foot or so, probably less. But they do have a fairly, if you get close enough to look at them, but they are small snakes and do have a blotch pattern, but they have kind of that cinnamon marking down the back is fairly typical of these also. It looks kind of pale in this specimen. This is a little blurry. Okay, and there is a distinction. I'm being a little picky about this. Snakes, I mean, you could, technically speaking, eat most of them. So they're not poisonous, but they are, some of them, venomous. Okay, so poisonous things would be things that have a skin toxin that if you touch them or you eat them, they're poisonous. If you have something that will bite or sting and inject venom, they're venomous. And in general, venom is injected, poison is ingested. This one's got a mechanism for introducing the toxin. And this one, you have to eat it. It has to be ingested or acquired You touch it and stick it in your mouth kind of thing. But the short answer, if it bites you and you die, it's venomous. If you bite it and you die, it's poisonous. So you got like a poison frog here. And in this case, they're showing a snake bite, a venomous snake bite. So if it stings or has fangs that can inject venom, they're venomous. If you eat it and it causes you to be sick, you die from ingestion, it's poison. Okay, and all the other snakes I'm going to talk about are harmless. And this one's fairly rare and it hides. It's a scarlet snake, but again, do that comparison with the coral mimic. You've got white and black next to each other, and it's got a pointy nose. And this snake is totally harmless. Rare, but here. Okay, lots of people have run across these, or they've run across you. There are a bunch of different color morphs in them, but the most common color morph is going to be black. So when you're out and about and see a black snake, very slim, fast, it's going to be a black racer. They've got kind of a light colored belly, and they are quick. Now, people tell stories about snakes chasing them, which is not valid. Okay, a lot of snakes are familiar with the habitat in which they live, and they have a place they want to hide. If you're standing between them and what they consider a safe place, they may run in your direction. I say run. They crawl really fast. So it's a misperception on the part of the people who are looking at them. They're not really chasing them, but these guys are fast. Yeah, and there's a Buttermilk Racer, there's a yellow belly, but what you're probably going to see here is the standard solid black with a light colored belly and skinny. And our largest in terms of length, because these guys can get in the neighborhood of 7 feet long. They are coach whip snakes. They're related to the racers. They're another fast snake. They can move, well, a human could probably they can outrun any of these guys easily. But they are, for a snake, quite fast. And the color pattern is interesting too. The upper part is usually quite dark, and it shades into red, sometimes kind of a creamy colored, but they're an attractive, very long, slender, fast snake, coach whips. This is going to be fairly unusual here. It doesn't have a really distinct pattern. They're usually grayish, but this belongs in with the king snakes. And a lot of the king snakes are well known because they are predators on other snakes. And most of them are immune to the venom of other snakes. But a king snake is a predator on other snakes. We have milk snakes. This is another one of the mimics for a coral. They've got bright patterns, but again, if you look at the edges, it's a white next to a black. They have a relatively blunt face, and all of the corals are going to have a black rounded snout too. Again, if you live here, you don't have to worry about it anyway. If you see a snake that's marked like this, it's harmless. And the milk snakes, it was a screwy story about how they hang out in barns because a lot of these guys will eat rodents too. And there's a story about them drinking milk, but snakes are all obligate carnivores. They eat meat. They eat other living things. There are no vegetarian snakes. And none of them are milk drinkers either. But an eastern milk snake, again, the black bands next to a light colored band, totally harmless. Okay, this is another king snake that is common in our area. Almost everybody's run across a speckled king, and they are, if they run across another snake that's even close to their size, they can eat another snake that's almost their size, and they will definitely constrict and take down anything that's just close to their size or a little smaller. But they will take other things, but they are well known for eating other snakes. But if you see a snake that has a speckledy pattern, and again, you'll note that not much of a neck, and this one's a constrictor, but a harmless snake, and they're usually pretty good natured. An arboreal snake, these guys like to hang out in trees and they're well camouflaged. It's a skinny, slim snake, doesn't get really big. And the kind of weird trivia fact, when they die, if you find one that's dead, they turn blue when they die. The color, the yellow in the pigment fades. But ordinarily, they're really well camouflaged for their environment. They hang out in trees a lot, and you'll see them kind of in low shrubs, and they eat almost exclusively insects. Harmless and attractive little snake. Another rat snake. Now, some of the rat snakes have a reputation for eating birds and chicken eggs, and some of the old timers call them chicken snakes because, if you have poultry, you occasionally will find them in your hen house, and they are excellent climbers, and they will eat birds and eggs. And I couldn't resist putting another corn snake in. They are a very nicely colored snake, and sometimes in like pet stores, you'll see these bred for the pet trade to have really pretty colors. But it is a type of rat snake. The one you're probably going to be most likely to see is a western rat snake, and the majority of them are really black. Some of them have a little kind of white patterning to them, not the same overall pattern like a Speckled King has. And these guys do have more of a neck, but they are really good climbers. And if you find one, up a wall or up a tree, and they get quite large, but the rat snakes are really good at rodents. But yes, they will take birds and eggs. Now, master gardeners, there are a lot of small snakes that you will come across in the course of weeding, gardening, and this is one of them. And some people think, oh, it's a worm. Well, if you look a little closer, it's got scales, so it is a proper snake, but they are tiny. And they have these glossy, dark gray backs and a pretty pink belly, but none of them get very big. And they eat slugs, worms, soft stuff, small insects, quite common in gardens. This one's aquatic. You probably won't find it very far from water, but it's really a pretty snake. This lovely contrasting bright, shiny red and black pattern. You don't see those very much outside of a wild habitat because they're specialists on salamanders. They primarily like to eat salamanders, and they're found in aquatic environments. But mud snakes are just really pretty snakes. And this is the one that's just super mellow. They are immediately tame and won't even bother to bite. They may squirm a bit, but mud snakes just don't bite. And these guys usually don't either. They are performers. They are the drama noodles, drama queens of the snake world. They will flatten, they will hiss, they'll put on this great show of being threatening. And if that doesn't work, they pretend to die. They put on just a real performance. They are performance artists, and they're serious about it too. You can flip them over after they've gone through their death throes. They'll musk, they'll stink, they'll roll over, they'll let their tongues hang out. I'm dead, believe it. You flip them over and they'll flop right back. But these are toad specialists, and they like to burrow in kind of soft dirt, but they really like to eat toads, and they've got the ability to cope with the toxins. But that little pointy turned up snoot, that's a hog nose. If it's got a nose like that, that's what it is, despite the bizarre patterns and colors that they can come in. And a ringneck snake is another garden snake. These are all small snakes, worms, slugs, small insects. But that behavior, kind of flashing that usually orange or yellow underside, when they're disturbed, it's all for show. They're totally harmless. But a little ringneck snake is another small garden snake. And these are pretty featureless, but a plain brown snake with no pattern like this, small, they never get very large. Yet another worm, bug, slug, eating snake, common in gardens. Now, this is a Gulf swamp snake. This one is one that's partial to eating crawdads, an aquatic snake with a light-colored belly, very round eyes. You're probably not going to see this one unless you're in a water area. There are tons of water snakes, and a lot of them end up dead because people go, oh, it's cottonmouth. Well, look close. Again, that rounded sort of head, round pupil. It looks sort of featureless, and a lot of these end up dead because it's a cottonmouth, and they don't have that gaping behavior either. They're kind of ornery, and they will strike, and they, And cottonmouths have kind of stinky secretions that they mark their turf with, and these guys also, they stink. When they're upset, they musk. But another thing to kind of keep an eye on, if you get a good look at the head, if you see these dark lines across the bottom part of the mouth, that's going to indicate a water snake. And a lot of these dark colored, no pattern water snakes will still show these dark lines and a round pupil, which means they're harmless. A lot of these guys eat fish, frogs, aquatic critters of various sorts. A broad-banded water snake, again, it's showing those lines on the lower jaw, which means it's not a cottonmouth. They won't have the gaping behavior. They've got kind of an attractive color pattern. Some of these come in kind of orangey and dark markings. And this one doesn't have really distinct markings, but this is a diamondback, not a diamondback rattler. This is a diamondback water snake, another aquatic snake of which we have several species. But again, those dark lines on the lower jaw, on the bottom of the mouth, indicates that it's a water snake. And this one has the small picture, a little more pattern to it. But calling it diamondback is kind of but that's the common name for it. And the most common, we saw some of these at Gulf of Gorge a couple of weeks ago. The Midland water snake, again, lines along the lower jaw, brown pupil, kind of irregular blotches along the back. It's another fish eater. And this one's a crayfish specialist, of which there are several. Again, you'd have to see them near water, and this one's not a real common snake either. The Graham's crayfish. Oh, this one just has a nice illustration. There was a Richard Attenborough special that showed how these were stalking crawdads and finding them just after they molted. They're very sensitive to the chemicals that the crawdads produce when they molt. And that's what they're after, is the ones that are just out of shed. But queen snakes are very uncommon, but we do have them here. And this is another garden snake. See, we saw some of these, saw at least one over by Camp Charlton. But Decay's brown snake, and the illustration that I got here came from Texas, but they were talking about how it's marked. It's got kind of freckles on it. But this is another small snake that's found in gardens, slug eater, earthworms. Decay's brown. And these are a relative of the Decays. It's another sort of brown snake, but it has a bright red and sometimes yellow, but that bright underside is characteristic of a red-bellied snake. And the one in the corner gives, sometimes they come in different shades of gray or brown, but they have a lot of times little white collar or white blotches right at the base of the head. And the distinctive part is that red or really bright, shiny belly. Small garden snake. These get a little longer, ribbon snakes. They're related to garter snakes, though you may see them in gardens. But they get, they're a medium-sized snake. But lines down the sides, round eyes, and they're a little snappish too. But ribbon snakes are fairly common here. And probably even more common, they're relative to the garter snake, not gardener, it's garter snake. And they usually have the stripes and kind of checker pattern along the sides. But there's a lot of variation in these. There's a California species that's like turquoise blue and orange. It's gorgeous. Okay, so for more info, I don't even know what time it is here. How are we? Pretty close. Okay. So I have questions, and for further information, you can look at Herps of Arkansas. I can even pull it up, maybe. And I've got the book here. Let's see. All right. So do we have any questions so far? Hey, Paul.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Great. All right. Well, great job, Belinda, as always.
Really interesting.
Absolutely. So we did get some questions in. I want to give a call. So we did a few more questions.
Yeah, but I was going to say a couple of more things about, okay, so the book, which we have at the library, I don't know if this is going to show up or not, but Amphibians and Reptiles of Arkansas, if you want to know more, get more info, there's a copy available at the library. Okay. And for folks that are having problems, as in, I have a snake and I don't want it here, you can check online, and there's at least 1 or 2 groups that will actually come out and move your snake.
Great. And that answers one of our questions from Julie. If we do find a venomous snake in our yard, who do we contact to remove it?
Okay.
So I want to give one more call for the viewers. If you ask a question, you still have a chance to win this gift certificate to Hot Springs Sod and Turf. Comes highly recommended by Judy here.
It's a great place.
And we'll randomly select a winner among the question askers here shortly. But we had a few others. Heather asked, are king snakes dangerous?
No, they are not. Not at all. Okay, now a lot of snakes will defend themselves, but the majority of the harmless snakes, even if you get bit, it's not a big deal. It's not fun, and some of the helpers wear gloves when they're handling, even the non-venomous snakes, because you don't want to get bit if you don't have to.
That kind of ties into Joanne's question, will non-venomous snakes bite? And do you need treatment if they do?
Well, no more than, I would say on the whole, getting bitten by a dog or a cat is going to be much worse than getting bit by most of our snakes. They're not that big, for one thing. It's like getting, a handful of needles, basically. They're this. So a coach whip does have a tendency to defend itself, and when it strikes, it will actually sink its teeth in and then pull back. It aims to do some damage.
How many times have you been bit by a snake?
No, man, not often. I'm usually pretty careful, and I've been pretty lucky too. We were looking at a little brown snake, and Karen had. So one of the characteristics is divided anal plates. I mean, looking through keys to identify exactly what a snake is, one of the things you can do is look underneath and look at the way the snake patterns of the scutes next to the tail are. And she was poking around on the snake, and I said, don't do that. Not if I'm holding it. Not if I'm... Because I actually did that once to another guy, and he was holding the snake and it bit him, and he wasn't pleased with me.
Question from Tanya. What is the safest homemade or bought product to use to deter snakes from coming into my garden/yard?
Big fat zero. Anything you buy from Walmart, garbage. There's no way to do it. I mean, so the best advice for, quote, deterring snakes, I mean, I hate to even say this too, because you want to have a naked yard. I mean, if you want a sterile, naked yard, keep it mowed real short. Don't put any lawn furniture. Don't put anything that they get hide under. Leave it where you can see everything. I mean, you strip it, basically. That's the only way you can be dead sure that they won't want to hang around. There's nothing to hide under. And people usually end up in trouble. If you see the snake and it sees you, fine, you're okay. The vast majority of problems occur if you have a situation where you don't see it, it doesn't see you, and you surprise each other. I mean, the snake gets stepped on, you get bit.
All right, Judy, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. But I want to say I've learned an awful lot tonight, and I feel very bad that I killed a worm snake not knowing what it was. So I'll desist and all that kind of stuff. But very interesting, and I found it very interesting to know that we only really have 5 threats that we have to watch for.
If you learn, if you just get a mental image, and it takes a little looking, and that's the other thing I'm going to recommend too. Almost everybody has a cell phone nowadays, and if you subscribe to iNaturalist, take a picture of that thing, and it will give you usually a pretty accurate idea of what it is that you're looking at. Go to iNaturalist or one of the ID sites. I'm on a Facebook group. A lot of the Facebook people, the snake identification Facebook group, if you post a picture of that, they'll give you all sorts of information.
It's awesome. Really did learn a lot. Now tell us a little bit about Master Naturalist and how they can become a member.
Okay, so you can go online and look at, we have a website, and I've got, there's Facebook group also, and it's just under Diamond Lakes Master Naturalist. There's also a website, and you can go under Arkansas Master Naturalist, and it'll give you forms and contacts for people. But if you're interested, you can go online and find out more.
Awesome. I've heard it's an awesome group.
Well, I'm probably the biggest critter member we have. A lot of our master naturalists are also master gardeners. We have a bunch of plant people. One of the guys that does a lot of the hikes is really into trees. We have retired forestry people that can tell you a lot about, trees and like economically important plants. And we have at least one guy who's really into foraging, and I do some foraging too. We had a really good class from a mushroom guy that's from Northwest Arkansas.
All good. Well, I thank you so much. Like I said, I've learned a lot, and I think I'm going to watch this again because
it's not something that you can learn immediately.
Yeah.
One of our guys was talking about, again, you just look at enough of them and you get an idea, a mental image, and there are just a few things to remember to get that overall image fixed in your head. And the Cottonmouth, the Copperhead, and the rattlesnakes, that's the only thing you have to worry about. And they've all got similar shapes to their heads.
Everybody else might have a heart attack if I ran into one, but other than that, all's good.
Again, people who spend a lot of time outdoors, and I know a lot of people like to wear those sandals, but if you're going to be in a brushy place where you have to step over logs, and that's the other thing, if you're stepping over an obstacle, especially a log, some of the rattlesnakes like to hang out there because that's where mice and rats run along, and they're ambush predators, and that's what they're waiting for, and they can smell where they've been. So you want to look as you're stepping, just keep your eyes kind of open. And carrying a stick is not a bad idea either. A lot of people carry a walking stick so you can, kind of move stuff around and look.
So what time of the year are these snakes not moving? Because that's when I'm going to go into the forest.
Winter. Okay, so they're all, quote, ectothermic, cold-blooded. The majority of them are going to be in hibernacula. They're going to be very slow, sluggish, waiting out the winter somewhere. A lot of these guys will be in holes in the ground, under rocks, in dead trees. They're going to be, not moving around much when it's cold.
That's when I'll move around.
Oh, man. And there are all sorts of crazy stories you hear from people about, I was chased by and they were out to get me. Well, they're not. They want to go the other way. They are not at all interested in being in association with us. We're big, we're scary.
I get it. I get it. But they still are scary to me. But anyway, less scary now. And I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. Great.
Good job as always, Belinda. And
Yeah.
we hope to have you back, of course. Belinda's done several programs with us in the past, some of which have been here live streamed, so you can go check those out, those previous episodes. And let us know what you would like to see Belinda or another master naturalist talk about next time we have a program on animals. If not Belinda, she has some connections and can recommend someone that might be a local expert on the subject.
If you want to, okay, we've had some questions about like crawdads in their yard. Oh, I ran into a crawdad mound with my lawnmower, and I didn't realize I had those. And I've never seen one before. Well, a lot of times they'll be down in a hole and you won't see them. But Dustin Lynch with the Natural Heritage Commission, I know he's done some programs, and I think he's done them for cows at least once. And he's done some programs for us too, but the Natural Heritage Commission is a really good resource for critter people too, and plant people.
Excellent. Well, Judy or I might reach out to him and see what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's pick a winner. I have my random number generator here, and number 3, which was Julie A. Congratulations, Julie. You have won a gift certificate to Hot Springs Sod and Turf, and that will be available to pick up here at the library as soon as we open tomorrow morning. So I'm writing your name on it right now. And Judy, do you want to remind them what they can tune
Oh, wait,
in
do we
next
have the second and third? Because with the gift bags. Okay.
Gift bags, that's right. Let's
So
tell them.
our Noah DeGroat signature gift bags. We've got a kneeler in there. We've got a garden tool. We've got a thing to remind you that all going in. A tote.
Oh, this thing's heavy.
Tool. Weeder. There's our little key ring hanging on the little tote there. And then we have a garden kneeler, which is indispensable in our line of work. Anyway, 2 of those.
So our winners for those are, we have Joanne E. and Tanya H. You've won the gift bags. So congratulations. So Judy, let's remind them what our program is on June 15th.
June 15th, we're going to have Casey Johansen. She's going to be talking about the Buffalo River National Park. It's actually their 50th anniversary this year. And she's going to be talking about light pollution and what it does to us and critters and all kinds of things. So that's great. And we're also going to announce the event, the Rain Barrel event, that's going to happen June 25th with Rachel Keeling. And it's involving a lot of different groups. So there will be a lot of really cool things there, I'm sure. And what I've heard is they're going to make a rain barrel and the kids are going to get to paint it. So that would be awesome. And we always appreciate you all coming. We appreciate the Garland County Library helping us with this wonderful program. And I just want to say one thing. I was able to go to our conference last week, and I picked up the award for the Garland County Library. And they won the Friends of the Master Gardener Award for the state, which is big. I'm sorry, I'm crying, but it was awesome. So we're going to give that to them at our meeting next month. Yay.
Well, thank you so much, Judy, for all that you do. And we love the partnership relationship we have between the library and the Master Gardeners. So,
yeah.
Wonderful collaboration.
Let it continue to grow.
Yeah. All right.
But Belinda
thank you
and
all
her
for
comments.
joining.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Belinda, for being a guest as always.
Great job.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. This, of course, was recorded like all these episodes. Tanya says, thank you. I learned a lot, and I think we all did. Hopefully we can respect our neighbors, the snakes, a little more. It
Well,
might be a little more of a struggle for some of us, but
yeah, I mean, that ophidiophobia thing where people have, you know, a reaction to, most of it's learned, but there seems to be a certain amount of like inborn reaction to snakes. Just the outline seems to really freak people out, but that can be gotten over, and education is the key. Just learn a few and you'll be fine.
oh, Belinda, thank you for educating us and
I'm never going to call a snake pretty, but thank you. I appreciate that you do.
I will say, baby snakes are actually pretty cute.
Oh, you see, some of these people who have pet snakes, they'll put little hats on them. It's hilarious. Dressing a snake. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I'm not going to be one of those people.
I'd have to dig for it, so I'm not going to show it tonight. Actually, it might be in this folder. I don't know. But a couple years ago, we had a pet photo contest.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to do that again this year. And we did have an entry for a snake, but the winner was actually a tarantula. You know, of course, almost everyone entered dogs and cats, you know, 95% of the entries, but the winning pet photo submission was a tarantula because it was so creative. They had little 8 slippers on the tarantula with a little bag and put a little tiara on top of the tarantula. And so that was the most popular. That was the winner. Beat all the dogs and cats here in Hot Springs, a tarantula.
You can't beat a tarantula.
So if a tarantula can do it, a snake can.
Yeah, well, that's a Harry Potter thing. That was one of the scenes from a Harry Potter movie where she was putting like roller skates on the giant spider. It was funny.
Let's see here. Okay, I'm gonna find it. Belinda, you stall for a minute. Tell us some more fun facts.
Okay, let's see. About snakes well, there's a lot of crazy stories about snakes too. About let's see, the hoop snake, about the snake that would grab its tail with its mouth and then roll, which is totally not true. But
now, you know, when I was a kid, we would go to my grandparents' house in Louisiana, and they would put a crystal egg in the nest.
All right. Now, there was at least one instance where, because it smelled like the other eggs, a snake had eaten one of those dummy eggs, and somebody put golf balls in the chicken's nest, and the snake had swallowed a golf ball. And at least a few people had brought them into vets for the vets to have to take the golf ball out, which is surgery for the snake.
I found the tarantula photo, and I was maybe over embellishing it. Didn't have 8 slippers on because it's been a few years, but it's still a great photo. This was our
it's got a tutu on.
See, the shoes are next to it here. It's got a tutu, tiara, and then the little bag.
Dress for the night out.
So this was our most popular pet photo here at the Garland County Library. We had 50 or 60 entries a few years ago. So we're going to have another contest coming up this summer. So please get your best pet photos ready for that.
Get your snakes and spiders out.
Yeah, jumping spider. There's a lady who has a video of her jumping spider pet, and it's just darling.
All right. Well, we'll call that a night. Thanks again. Thanks again for everyone watching. Thank you, Belinda, and thanks, Judy. We'll have more news to share about that wonderful award that's been honored to the Garland County Library. Thanks to the Master Gardeners in the near future. And until next time, stay tuned.
Good night, everybody. Happy Memorial Day.